Nobody retires and moves up north. So if you're thinking about retiring in paradise, both Florida and Puerto Rico offer great choices as far as climate, as far as lifestyle, as far as taxes. So if you're thinking about retiring in paradise, then this video is for you. And even if, whether it's a traditional retirement, an early retirement, even if you are thinking about being a digital nomad, these are the things you're going to need to consider. So we're going to go over things like lifestyle, climate, housing, taxes, healthcare. Those are the things you're going to want to focus on if you're trying to compare Florida and Puerto Rico. So let's get into it right now.
Shut up and sit down.
Just in case you're new here, this is the Retire Mentality, a place where we want to change your mentality about retirement. We talk a lot about retiring early, investing in real estate, different aspects of just how your mind works getting through retirement, especially in an early retirement. And so I try to just not give the same 5 reasons to do this or that. I try to do a little bit more thought-provoking things on this channel. So if that's of interest to you, you're in the right place, my friends. So let's just dive right into this. Let's start by talking about housing. Obviously, Florida is a big state, so housing prices can vary widely from Orlando to Naples to Miami to Panama City Beach, where I'm at right now. In Panama City Beach, for instance, I'm getting ready to list a house for a friend of mine. It's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. We're going to list it probably around $390,000. You could walk across the street and be at the beach. It's in kind of a quieter end of the beach in the neighborhood. But you can spend as much as you want. You can buy this house that I'm staying in for about $750,000. It's a 4-bedroom house with a pool. There's condos that cost $1 million. There's condos that cost $300,000 here. So depending on what you want, the cost of housing can vary widely in Florida. You have to consider your taxes and your insurance. Insurance rates have gone up a lot in Florida over the last couple of years, which means HOA fees for your condos have gone up a lot too. That's something you can easily research based on where you want to live in Florida. But as an overall rule, I think housing in Puerto Rico is a little bit cheaper. This house that I'm standing in is, like I said, a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house with a pool, about 2,100 square feet. My house in Puerto Rico is very similar to this house, and it's probably worth about $400, $450, somewhere in that ballpark. Like I say, this house is worth around $700, $750. So to get a comparable house, my house in Puerto Rico is actually even a little bit closer to the beach, but it's in a little bit more of a rural area. So overall, I would say housing in Puerto Rico is going to be cheaper. If you're looking for a condo in San Juan or something, you could probably pick something up around the $250 range, give or take a little bit there. And my homeowner's insurance in Puerto Rico is a lot cheaper than here in Florida, and my taxes are also cheaper. So overall, housing costs and housing expenses to keep up your house are going to be lower in Puerto Rico than they are here in Florida. Let's talk a little bit about utilities, power, groceries, those kind of day-to-day expenses. In Puerto Rico, I always get grief from Puerto Ricans about how I say Puerto Rico sometimes, so I kind of go back and forth. I try though, so give me a little bit of slack there. Electricity in Puerto Rico is going to be more expensive than it is here in Florida. Groceries, I think, are going to be about the same. And things like internet and water and trash, those are a little bit cheaper in Puerto Rico than they are here in Florida. So it's kind of a wash there, I would say. As far as groceries go, it's harder to find some things like a lot of vegetables or some of the wines that we like to buy here in Florida or some of the whiskeys and bourbons that we like to buy. There's less choices in Puerto Rico definitely than there are here in Florida. But the cost on those things pretty much is a wash. When we get up to this retirement age, healthcare is a major concern. I'm 51 years old. I'm no spring chicken anymore. And most people don't retire this early. Most people looking at retirement are going to be in their 60s or even into their 70s. So if you're looking for a more traditional retirement age, retiring to these places, healthcare is going to be a big consideration. And in Florida, Medicare is going to be accepted everywhere you go. There's going to be all kinds of specialists, and you can get any kind of doctor that you want and great healthcare. And Puerto Rico, it's going to be a little bit more limited of the choices you can get as far as healthcare and quality of care. Not to say that you can't get quality healthcare in Puerto Rico, but it's going to be harder to find. You might have to go up to San Juan. And for big things, surgeries and big deal type of health problems, most people go to the States. They leave Puerto Rico and they don't even mess with it down there. So if you have health problems or you foresee health problems coming in the future, it's going to take a lot of research and looking into exactly what's going to be covered, what insurance you can use, what doctors are going to be close to where you want to live. And you're going to have to weigh that out a lot. It's going to take a lot of research, but I would dig into that deep before you do decide to go down to Puerto Rico. Okay, let's touch on taxes and some of the financial benefits going one way or the other. In Florida, there's no state income tax, which means retirees can keep more of their pensions, more of their Social Security income. Property taxes, as we just talked about, can be a little bit higher depending on what county you're going to be in. They can vary from county to county, but property taxes are, again, something that's easily to look into depending on what area you want to be in, but I would say generally higher than in Puerto Rico. And you have a sales tax in Florida that, depending on where you're going to be, between 6 and 7.5%. So anything you buy, if you're going to buy cars and groceries and TVs and cameras and whatever, there's going to be a sales tax in Florida to make up for some of that no income tax. In Puerto Rico, there's no federal income tax, but there is a tax that's equivalent to, I guess it's more like a state tax. I don't know, Puerto Rico does have a tax, but they don't have the same federal income tax laws that we have in the States. And all the federal tax money or state tax money, whichever way you want to look at it, stays in Puerto Rico. So it's usually generally lower than most states. And so it also would tax benefits like pensions and Social Security lower than most places in the regular US. There's also Act 60. Which used to be called Act 22, I think, and Act 20. They rolled them into one, and now it's Act 60. And a lot of people talk about this on the internet a lot and say that everybody from the U.S. comes to Puerto Rico to take advantage of this tax loophole and pay no taxes, and it's hard on the Puerto Ricans and all these things. And it's really not true, because Act 60 only applies to very high wealth individuals. The first thing you got to do when you apply for Act 60 is pay $10,000 to a local charity. So it can cut some corporate taxes down to zero, some capital gains taxes down to zero, but you got to be a day trader making, high into the 7 figures, I think, to really make Act 60 worth it for you. You can dig more into that. I'm not going to make this a video about Act 60, but it's available, but it's really for high net worth individuals. And finally, sales tax in Puerto Rico is higher than in Florida. You're looking 10, 11, 11.5%, depending on what you're buying. Some food items can be a little bit lower, but at least 10% sales tax for everything you buy there as well, compared to 6 or 7 in Florida. Okay, let's talk about climate and weather here for a minute. Let's start with Florida. Here I am in Panama City Beach, so I'm in the Florida Panhandle on the little top part, all the down south, like in the lower part. So up here, we do have a little bit more of a winter than they do in Miami and farther south. So depending on where in Florida you want to be, we usually have 1 to 2 days where it freezes and you have to worry about your pipes up here. But we usually only get about 1 month of winter where it's cold. It could be December, it could be January, it could be February, but it's usually not 2 months. It's usually one of those months that gets pretty cold. The farther down you go, obviously, the more temperate your winters are going to be. We have very hot summers, humid summers, and we have bugs and everything the same as Puerto Rico does. Hurricanes are an issue in both places. The thing about hurricanes in Puerto Rico is if there's a hurricane coming here in Florida, I can jump in my car and drive to my parents' house in Atlanta and get somewhere safe. And if there's one coming in the islands down there, it's a lot more difficult to evacuate. And a lot of times you just have to hunker down, and it can take a lot longer for recovery efforts to restore power and water and those kind of things. So that's a big consideration. And as far as the weather in Puerto Rico, there's no winter down there. It's hot all the time. It's actually more humid than Florida. So it's going to be hotter in the winter. It's going to be hotter in the summer. It's going to be more humid. And what else? But they do have some higher mountain areas in Puerto Rico, where in Utuado and in the center, even on El Yunque, you can get up in elevation a little bit. And you can knock that temperature down 5-10 degrees if you get up in those higher elevations a little bit. But then you're going to be away from the beaches. So you got to weigh that out. Okay, let's get into some lifestyle and activity differences. Florida's going to have a few more options as far as things like golf courses. Boating is a little bit easier because you have usually closer access to marinas, or able to have a house on the water if you want to have a boat. That's more difficult in Puerto Rico to find a house with an actual dock in the backyard, or to be close to a marina. Like where I live and where my house in Puerto Rico is, it's probably 20 minutes to the marina over in Fajardo. So here in Panama City Beach, you can there's a lot of neighborhoods close to marinas and a lot of neighborhoods with docks in the backyard. So boating activities are easier here. More options for golf courses. There are golf courses, obviously, in Puerto Rico, but they're more sparse and spread out a little bit down there. Also, there's more if you're looking as a retiree for a retirement type of a neighborhood, like the Villages in Central Florida or here in Panama City Beach, we have Margaritaville for the 55 plus communities. Not a lot of that going on down in Puerto Rico. So if you were looking for that sense of community, Florida's going to win out there. Language, you know, a lot of places like my house in Humacao, there's not a lot of English spoken there. Most people speak a little bit of English, but you can have some language barriers there. You're not going to run into that in most of Florida, maybe in a few places down south. There's going to be some places where you could have a little bit of problem with that, but less of a language problem, obviously, in Florida also. But I would say Puerto Rico has a more laid back lifestyle. It's not as hustle and bustle as Florida. And you have a wider variety of beaches here. The beaches all look exactly the same. I can drive 5 hours in any direction and the beach looks just like it does in my backyard. And in Puerto Rico, you can drive 20 minutes and have a red sand beach, and drive 20 minutes the other way and have a black sand beach, and have palm trees right on the beaches. And you do have a bigger variety of beaches there. Even the west coast to the east coast and the north to the south, they're all kind of different. So it's nice to be able to get in the car and drive a little bit and have a little bit of variety in your beach scene. Healthcare and infrastructure, I touched on this a little bit before. Easier to find healthcare in Florida, easier to find specialists. For large healthcare things, you're going to have to leave the island in Puerto Rico. And as far as infrastructure, much better roads in Florida. There's a lot of potholes. The power goes out a lot down in Puerto Rico. And you got to have a cistern and a generator and solar panels and all kinds of stuff if you really want to be a full-time resident down there and not lose power and not lose air conditioning and a lot of the things that we really rely on here in Florida that seem like they're a lot easier to get. One last thing I'll throw in here that I didn't put on my list before, but that's travel. Depending on how close you are to an airport in Florida, it's easier to probably hop on a plane and fly around. You can get to San Juan and fly anywhere you want, but you're going to have more connections and it's going to be a little bit more difficult to travel, and you're going to have to get off of the island before you go anywhere. We thought when we lived down in St. Thomas that island hopping would be easier, but it's a little more difficult than we thought. But you could also catch cruise ships out of San Juan. You can catch cruise ships out of Miami and Orlando. So depending on what kind of travel you want to do, you can do a little bit of digging around on that one yourself. So what's the final verdict? I don't know. What do you guys think? Leave me a comment down below. Are you thinking about these two places? Do you prefer Florida? Do you prefer Puerto Rico? Are you considering this idea? Leave me some comments down below. Let me know if there's something I forgot in this video. Keep the conversation going down there, because sometimes you guys put stuff I didn't think of and people learn from that too. So thanks for watching. And if you want to see a video about comparing moving from Florida to Spain, go watch this video next.